Hi, I'm Mark Rowe with Don Bushnell Ministries, and I want to share with you today about Transformation Prayer Ministry, which is an amazing tool that, in my opinion, every pastor needs in his or her tool belt. I spent 13 years in full-time pastoral ministry. The first 3.5 of those years, I was in pastoral care, first at a mega church, and that mega church birthed another church, and so there was a transition period where I was actually at both churches. And then for 9.5 years, I was the senior pastor of a church. And during all of that time, I always felt like there was a tool that was missing from my tool belt. There were people that would come in that had deep wounding, and it didn't seem to matter how you prayed for them, or there might be a little breakthrough here, a little breakthrough there, but it seemed like they were always struggling and they just couldn't get out of their rut. And then I went through a difficult season myself, and someone introduced me to Transformation Prayer Ministry, and I realized it was the tool that was missing out of my tool belt. In fact, I'm of the belief that every pastor needs, at a minimum, at least 3 tools in their tool belt. That's the ability to help people resolve conflict, the ability to help people understand boundaries and set boundaries in certain situations, and then the ability to bring healing or transformation to old wounds that are getting triggered in conflict. Because really, at the heart of it, ministry takes place in conflict. And as a pastor, you need this tool in your tool belt, both for your own sake, because you're going to get hurt in ministry, you're going to get offended in ministry, and it gives you a way to let go of that hurt, let go of that anger, and move past it. But it also gives you an amazing tool to help people, broken people, hurting people that I couldn't find. I could find certain ministries that would help them a little bit here, a little bit there. Now, one of the things I like the most about Transformation Prayer Ministry is the entire thing is set up on a system where there's a mentor and a mentee. And the importance of that is when someone is learning Transformation Prayer Ministry, they're not on their own, but they're being equipped and empowered so they can do Transformation Prayer Ministry on themselves, by themselves, and keep getting freedom. Because as a pastor, particularly if you're bivocational or just at a church where there's just a lot of things that are demanding your time, it's hard to repeatedly, week after week, give a person multiple hours of your time, and you know they need it. But if you can give them a tool, get them started, get them some success where they see transformation, they can go off and use that tool on their own and literally get deep breakthrough and freedom, then you're headed down the right path. So at Don Bushnell Ministries, we offer Transformation Prayer Ministry, which we did not develop. The concept was developed by Dr. Ed Smith and his son Joshua, and you can find out more information about Transformation Prayer Ministry at transformationprayer.org. But we do offer the mentoring and sessions in Transformation Prayer Ministry for completely free. Now, our heart and our goal behind that is we want to help people. We want the kingdom of God to be built up. But the number one objective we have behind training people in Transformation Prayer Ministry is we want it brought to each local church that would be open to receiving it. And so if you're here, maybe you're a pastor, maybe you're a ministry leader, maybe you're not. We want to help you, but if you're not involved in ministry, we'd like you to reach out to your pastor or to a ministry leader and get them involved in the process, because what we'd prefer not to have happen is to teach you Transformation Prayer Ministry and then it not get turned around and shared with anyone else. We really want to invest in building the kingdom. We want to get people set free, but we want to do it in a 2 Timothy 2:2 kind of a way where there's generations beyond us that are getting impacted for the better by it. If you're new to Transformation Prayer Ministry, then as you're becoming familiar with the process map, one of the things you want to realize is that when you're on the left side of the process map, you'll be in the emotion box, the memory box, belief box, truth, and then transformation box. And on that side, you go basically from top to bottom. But as you're doing that, if at any point in time you run into anger or you run into another solution, which is keeping you from remembering or hearing God or anything along those lines, then you're going to wind up quickly shifting over to the right side of the process map and either processing through the anger questions or the solution box questions. I'm going to start by talking about the left side of the process map first, and then I'll switch gears and cover the right side of the process map. So in a transformation prayer ministry session, you're in charge. You're going to decide what area, what emotion you've been getting triggered with recently. And you're going to start by actually focusing on that emotion. And it's literally just allowing yourself to remember and experience that emotion. Put your attention, put your focus there, and naturally you should remember or associate with previous times that you have experienced that. Ideally, what we're looking for is an early childhood memory when you first experience whatever this unwanted emotion is. Then when we get to that memory, we'll enter into the memory box and we'll start by asking the question of how does that make you feel and why do you feel that way? And ultimately what we're looking for is a belief of who I am, who God is, or what is my condition. If we can find an answer that fits that, there's a significant likelihood that as we present that to the Lord and we hear the Lord speak to that there's going to be transformation. So sometimes the questions will feel a little bit repetitive because we'll ask, how does that make you feel? Why do you feel that way? And we might loop back and forth and even ask the question, why does believing what you just answered make you feel the way you feel? Because we're, again, looking for who I am, who God is, or what is my condition. But when we can identify something that you believe about yourself or about God, then we're going to ask the question in the belief box, not that it's true, but does it feel true that, God abandoned me in this situation, or I'm fill in the blank, whatever that is. Assuming that that feels true, not that it necessarily is true. Maybe you know that it doesn't agree with Scripture, it doesn't agree with what God says about you, but yet in your heart of hearts it feels true, then I'm going to ask, may we present that belief to the Lord. Now, assuming that the answer to that question is yes, we're going to ask the question, Lord, what do you want, and fill in your name, what do you want this person to know? And we're just going to sit there, pause, and allow you to hear directly from God. And this is where the transformation comes. And so for some people, they're very comfortable hearing God's voice. They know when they're hearing God's voice, and they're going to listen, and they're going to hear God's voice usually relatively quickly, and they're going to say, this is what it was. There's other people that are still in the process of learning to hear God's voice, and it's very possible that you might have what you think is a thought that runs through your mind, and you think, well, that's not God. It's important in a transformation prayer ministry session to go ahead and report what that thought was, because there's a lot of times where it actually is God speaking and the person doesn't realize it. And the true test is done in the transformation box when we ask, does whatever the belief was, does that still feel true after God spoke? Now, it's also possible that God spoke and you know that God spoke and you feel some breakthrough, you feel some transformation, you feel some relief, but you're like, there still seems like there's more. Well, there are some memories, there are some experiences we've had in life where there's actually several different beliefs that entered in, and maybe we took one splinter out of your wound and there's still a couple more. And so we'll have you fish around in that memory and that emotion, and if something stirs up, we'll come back through the process again and deal with that. So that's the left side of the process map. Then you have the right side of the process map, and I'm going to start with anger. Our anger is possible. It could be directed towards God. It's also possible that it could be directed towards a person. And where we go on the process map really depends on the answer to that question. So if you're focusing in on the anger and you realize that you have some anger towards God, then the next question we're going to ask is, why do you feel angry towards God? Now, the answer that most people give in this situation is truth-based. In other words, it's like, well, God didn't protect me, or God didn't do this, and that's actually true. So we're going to follow that up with a question of, why does that make you feel angry at God? And there's a belief behind that. It's my perception of why God let it happen, and that is typically a lie-based belief, like God let it happen because he doesn't love me, or whatever it might be for a given person. So once we've identified the lie-based belief about God in that situation, we're going to present that to the Lord for transformation. assuming you hear from the Lord, we're going to then test for transformation just like we did before on the left side of the box. If for some reason you're not hearing from God, then again, we're in the solution box. And I typically find that I'll start with the anger box, because more times than not, with myself, with people I work with, when they're not hearing from God, it's either they're not used to hearing God's voice and God is speaking and they're just saying, well, that can't be God, or they're angry at God, and because they're mad at God, they're not hearing from Him, and so we need to work through that solution. Now, if your anger is directed towards a person, then we're going to go from the anger box and we're going to go straight down into the solution box. And the first question in the solution box is, do you sense any hesitancy or resistance at the thought of letting go of your anger towards this person? And if the solution isn't anger, then we'll, do you have any hesitancy or resistance at the thought of remembering what happened in association with that particular emotion, or whatever it appears the solution is? Now, particularly in the instance of anger, but more times than not when I'm in the solution box asking that first question, one of the ways I like to go after that question, this is just my personal spin on the transformation prayer ministry process, is to ask the question, not that it's true, but is it possible that you might be resistant or hesitant toward letting go of your anger, for example? And what I found in my own life, and as I got used to the transformation prayer ministry process, was more times than not, subconsciously, I had no conscious connection to it. It was like, I want to get rid of this anger, but obviously it keeps coming back up, so there's a reason for it. It must subconsciously be serving a purpose. So for me, oftentimes anger is, well, I'd rather feel angry than afraid or weak or whatever the other ugly emotion is. And so anger, in a dysfunctional way, is protecting me from having to process, cope with, deal with those other emotions. Then the next question is, what do you believe would happen if you were to let go of your anger? Now, it's not asking what would happen positively, because if you really believe that would happen, you would have already let go of your anger. It's asking, what negative thing do you think might happen if you were to let go of your anger? And it's like, okay, kind of what I just alluded to, that I'm going to then have to deal with the fact that I feel weak in this situation. My anger is making me feel stronger. I feel afraid, and I don't like that. So you answer that question, and the next question is, so then the reason for your anger is what? Well, to protect me, to make me feel strong, whatever the appropriate answer is, but it's the answer to the negative reason why the anger is still there. When we've identified that solution belief, then we're going to go back across to the belief box, and the question is not, is it true, but does it feel true that my anger is protecting me from feeling weak or from feeling afraid, or whatever the answer would be? May we present that belief to the Lord. Lord, what do you want? In my case, Mark to know. I listen, I hear, and then I test for transformation. Does it still feel true that my anger makes me feel strong or protects me? Whatever the answer to the third question in the solution box was. So that's a quick overview of how the process works. Now, I know that's a lot of information. It's very possible you heard it and you're like, I don't know how I can implement all this. Well, you don't have to initially. I just want you to be familiar with it, because if you kind of understand some of the dynamics that take place in transformation prayer ministry, then your first session, and assuming we do a couple of sessions, will be that much easier, and we'll kind of have just some common ground we're navigating from. And we won't have to take time at the start of your session to explain that. But know that in a transformation prayer ministry process, I'm going to mentor you. You're the mentee. My goal is to help you learn the process so you can go home and, one, do it on your own and get transformation on some issues that might be uncomfortable to share with other people about. And second, I'd love to see you turn around and share it with others and start learning that process. I love the saying that, if you learn something once, if you teach it twice, then you're really going to ingrain it in yourself. And that's the same kind of concept that works with transformation prayer ministry. So this is a ministry that we at Don Bushnell Ministries want to put out there. Our primary focus, the people that are going to get the first priority in transformation prayer ministry appointments, are those that whether it's they themselves are going to do this ministry then at their church, and they've already talked with their pastor about that, or they are a pastor or senior leader that's empowered to do it, or someone that is not necessarily in that role, but is working with someone at their church, and someone in the church is going to be involved in learning the process. But we're going to do transformation prayer ministry with this particular person to get them set free. The ultimate goal is that transformation prayer ministry would be taken to your church, so not only you get free, but there are others at your church that are going to get set free, and the ministry becomes available at your church because your church has welcomed it and embraced it. I hope that makes sense. We would love to set up an appointment with you if you reach out to us using our website, donbushnellministries.org. We'll get back to you, and whether it's in person, Zoom, telephone, we'll figure something out, and we'll move forward from there. God bless you.